area involving inscribed figures. A rectangle is placed around a semicircle as shown below. The length of the rectangle is 10 feet. Find the area of the shaded region. Use 3.14 for pi and do not round your answer. Be sure to include the correct unit in your answer. So that is a lot of instructions. So first it tells us that we have a rectangle that's placed around a semicircle as shown below. So we have this kind of rectangular figure and then we have a semicircle. Semicircle specifically means half a circle. Okay, so it doesn't mean that it's just some random piece of the circle. It's specifically half of the circle. So we're going to do area for a rectangle and area for a circle, but because it's half the circle, that tells us we need to divide it in half or divide by 2. And then they give us the length of the rectangle, and then they want us to find the area of the shaded region here. We also are specifically told to use 3.14, not pi. If you use pi instead of 3.14, you will get a different answer than they are expecting, and you will get it marked wrong. If you round your answer, because they specifically say do not round your answer, you will again get it wrong. So it's not that your answer is 100% wrong, but you're not following directions. They're specifically telling you what to do. Make sure you follow the kind of simple directions in here, because I can't tell you how many students get things marked wrong on here just because they're not following the directions. And then the last piece is be sure to include your unit in the answer. So on the next page, when we actually get started, we'll have to choose, is it feet, feet squared, feet cubed? Because this is feet. It will automatically have feet on there. We just have to choose the correct one. Because we're finding area, we're going to do squared. Area is always squared because you always have 2 dimensions in area. So you usually have what we refer to as like length and width, something along those lines. So both of those dimensions have a unit on them, which in this case is feet. So if I say feet times feet, then I did it twice, so feet squared. So anyway, that'll make a little more sense on the next page also. So let's scroll down here and let's see what they're doing on the example. So we have the area of the shaded region is the area of the rectangle minus the area of the semicircle. So we know we're going to have to find the area of the rectangle. So I know the whole thing. And then I'm going to have to take away the area of the semicircle. So that's one of the pieces there. And then we have to understand pieces of the circle in order to move forward. So we do have to recognize they told us that the length is 10 feet here. So they told us that in the example and they wrote it on the diagram here. So we know that the length is 10 feet. If the top is 10 feet, the bottom is 10 feet. So even though on the original diagram they didn't put it down here, it transfers from top to bottom. This is a diameter of the circle because remember this is a half circle. So this is literally the center of the circle right here. And then this line is going from side to side through the center. So that makes it a diameter. If we know that this is a diameter, then we can find the radius because a radius is just half of this. It goes from the side of the circle to the center. So this is a radius. The other side is also a radius. And they'll be equal to each other. So we need to divide by 2, which is what they do here. So they're showing you have 5 feet. Well, how did they transfer it to this one? Well, if I go from the center of the circle to the side straight up, I also have 5 feet because all radii in a circle are the same. Once I have one, I know them all. So they are expecting you to manipulate the properties of a circle in order to get the numbers you need because we're only given one number to start with, but we can solve this. So now we have the height of the rectangle. We have the length of the rectangle. So we have length and width. I said height, but we can also think of that as width. So we can find the area. Length times width is 10 times 5, so 50. And then the semicircle. So they're putting 1/2 here, and I tend to write it out like this, area of the semicircle. So I do like a half circle thing. And I say it's pi r squared because that's how you find the area of a circle. But I need to divide it in half because it's only half a circle. So they're putting the 1/2 in front, which is perfectly fine. Or you can divide the whole thing by 2 when you get to the end. So then they use their radius. They have 1/2 pi times 5 squared. I don't particularly like how they're jumping here just because it's not showing you the whole thing here. So let's go 3.14 because that's what they want to use instead of pi times 5 squared over 25 or over 2, sorry. And then area equals 3.14 times Make sure you do your exponent first because order of operations says parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division, addition, subtraction. Exponents come before multiplication and division. So I have to do my exponent before I can multiply by 3.14. So 5 times 5 is 25. That's what an exponent means. We still have divided by 2. So now, when we multiply these two numbers and divide by 2, and they do give us a calculator here. So when you do this, because you can do this all in one step, this top part, you have 5 squared. I would hit equals just to make sure the calculator knows you want 5 squared, and then multiply by 3.14. Because depending on the calculator, I've seen some of it where students put it all in at one time, and the calculator doesn't seem to understand what they want, and it'll start multiplying or dividing the wrong pieces. So now I have 78.5 over 2 divided by 2 still. So I need to go back to my calculator and click divided by 2. And this will give my area of my circle, which is exactly what they got, the semicircle. Don't forget the last step. These were my two areas. I need to subtract. So I need to go back to my 50, which is my rectangle, and I need to take the circle away. So I have to subtract that, and this is my answer, 10.75. So that's the shaded region, these weird little corners that are left. That's all that's left is 10.75. All right, so let's go ahead and clear this and try this out. Okay, so a circle is placed in a square with side lengths of 10, as shown below. Find the area of the shaded region. Again, we're using 3.14. We're not rounding, and we need to make sure we choose our units before we click check. All right. So we have a square with 10 centimeters. Properties of a square, I know if one side is 10, the other side is 10. So I can already find my area of my square without having to know the properties of a circle. So area of my square is length times width, which is 10 times 10. I have 10 on the side and 10 on the top, which is 100. It was 10 centimeters times 10 centimeters. So centimeters times centimeters means centimeters squared. This 2 just tells me I had two lengths. Both of them were centimeters. All right, so now let's find the area of our circle. So remember, area of a circle equals pi r squared. This isn't a semicircle. It's the full circle we're cutting out. So I don't need to divide by 2. I divided by 2 in the example because it was a semicircle. It was half the circle. So this one is the entire circle being cut out. No dividing by 2. But I do need to know what radius is. So remember diameter, and if this is kind of the center of the circle here, and I go straight through, this 10 that's on the top is the same length that's going through the middle. So this diameter is 10. Well, I don't want the diameter. I want the radius. Remember, radius is just half of the diameter. So I'm going to take the diameter and divide by 2. And I get, whoops, that was silly. I said divide by 2 and I wrote the answer under there. That was my silliness. So we get 5 centimeters. This is our radius. So now we have pi, but they want us to use 3.14 times 5 squared. So let's go to our calculator here. Make sure you do 5 squared first because of order of operations. Exponents come first, then multiply by 3.14. So we get 78.5. This is still centimeters squared because 5 is centimeters, and squared means we have 5 centimeters times 5 centimeters. So we still multiplied 2 lengths there. So make sure this one of these isn't your answer yet. We have to take these two amounts and subtract. So I have the whole square, the 100, and I'm going to subtract the circle, which is 78.5. And I get 21.5. And they were both centimeters squared, so my answer is going to be centimeters squared. All right, so let's go ahead and click check. And we're good. Next. Clear. Okay, so now we have a triangle, and it's placed in a semicircle. Semicircle means half the circle. If the radius, it has a radius of 7 yards, so they're telling us the radius already. Find the area of the shaded region below. Again, 3.14 for pi. Don't round your answer. Include the units. Okay, so we're going back to semicircle here. So we have a semicircle. They already told us the radius. We know that it's 7. So I can already find the area of my, and I'm going to do a semicircle here. So remember, it's pi r squared divided by 2. We have to go back to divided by 2 because it's semicircle. It's half the circle. So I have pi. Oop, you know what? I'm going to change that to 3.14 because that's what they want us to use. So 3.14 times, they already told us the radius was 7 squared. And then we're going to divide by 2 at the end. All right, so let's go to our calculator here. We have 7 squared equals times 3.14 equals. All right, so I get 153.86. Don't forget to divide by 2 because that'll give you your final circle. So divide by 2 equals, okay, so the area of our circle is 76.93 yards squared. All right, so now I need to know this triangle. So we are going to have to manipulate the rules of a circle just a little bit. If this is a radius, like this, then this is also a radius. So if this is 7, this is also 7. Well, this is half. This is going from the center to the side. I can do the same thing on the other side. This is also 7. So area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. And again, this is just one that they do want you to remember from all the other ones that we've done for the past couple of weeks. So if you haven't been writing notes, you should be, because that's one that if you don't remember, you're going to have to go and look up, how do I find the area of a triangle? So you can look that up too. But they didn't give this to us on this. They expect you to know it. So we have 1/2 times, the base is just the bottom of the triangle here. And then the height is going from the vertice or the vertex down to the base. And it's shown with this right angle mark here. So the base and the height have to be at right angles to each other. They have to be perpendicular. So we have a base. Remember, it's not just 7. It's 7 plus 7. It's the whole thing. So 14 times the height, which is just 7. Okay, so now let's go in here to our calculator. So we have 14 times 7. I'm multiplying those because they're just a little easier to multiply. So we end up with 1/2 times 98. 1/2 times 98 is the same thing as saying 98 divided by 2. So we're just going to divide. Whoops. Divide by 2 equals, so we get 49 yards squared. Still yards squared because we had 14 yards, 7 yards, yards squared. All right. So remember, I have to take these away. I have a semicircle and I'm cutting this triangle out. So I'm going to take the semicircle and I'm going to subtract my triangle. So I end up with 27.93 yards squared. All right, check. Yay, we finished another one. All right, one more. A rectangle is placed around a semicircle as shown below. The width of the rectangle is 4 centimeters. Find the area of this shaded region. Okay, so with this one, we need to manipulate the circle just a little bit in order to figure this out. So if I know that the side is 4 centimeters, then if I go to the center here, remember this is half a circle, so the center is just on the line there, and I go straight up here. The rules of a rectangle say this 4 can carry all the way across. So it can go to the center, it can go all the way to the side here, but it does carry to the center here. Okay, so I can go here and it's going to carry right over here. So this is 4 centimeters right there. And this is a radius. So I already know the radius. If this is a radius, then guess what? This center to the side is also another radius. That's 4. The center to the other side is another radius, which is 4. So once I know my radii, I can just apply it to all the pieces that I need. And we need to know the bottom here because we need to have the full length and width of the rectangle. So remember to add these two together because the full length is 8, not just 4. The width here is 4 going up the side, but the full length is 8. Okay, so let's go ahead and find the area of our rectangle since we've got that now. So length is 8, width is 4. So 8 times 4 is 32. And remember it's centimeters, so we're going to go centimeters squared. Now let's find the area of our semicircle. So remember, it's pi r squared divided by 2. It's a semicircle. It's a half circle again. So we need to go 3.14 because that's what they want for pi times. We need a radii, and we wrote a bunch of them here, so we already know it's 4 squared divided by 2. Let's go ahead and grab our calculator. So we're going to go 4 squared equals times 3.14. Again, I put equals in between the squared just to make sure the calculator doesn't include anything funky in there. So we have 50.24 divided by 2. So we're going to divide by 2 equals 25.12 centimeters squared. All right, so I'm going to move this over here. We have our rectangle, we have our circle. Remember, we're cutting one out of the other. So I need to go back in here. I'm going to clear. I'm going to take my rectangle and I'm going to subtract my circle, semicircle, sorry. So I'm going to end up with 6.88. Do not round. That's another big one. No rounding. Put whatever answer you get in your calculator. Now, if you get a super duper long answer that's crazy, you might have done something wrong in here because we rounded off pi, so you shouldn't end up with a super long answer unless you also clicked pi. So just make sure it shouldn't be super long, like 2 or 3 decimals long. That's about how long these should end up. So anyway, let's go ahead and click centimeter squared and check that one. All right, we finished it. Yay!